I didn't know how far metal had come. Freddy is the one who introduced me to Sleep Token. He was like, yeah, there's this band called Sleep Token. They're like doing really well at the moment. I was like, oh, that rings a bell. Little did I know that like Lindsay was already doing freaking academy shows with them. Because like she's a friend of mine from a while back. And so I was like, oh yeah, Sleep Token. Cool.
That's my friend's project.
Yeah,
are they doing okay?
Yeah, and it's like, oh right, like metal's in a great place thanks to bands like them.
I love watching bands and having something fuck up on stage. That's how you, not because I'm like, screw you guys.
You're just taking notes. What did they do? Did it work?
Also, but it's like, that's how you truly test like what a band is made of, how they deal with crisis when it happens.
The video completely twists the narrative. So it's sort of like the girls get their comeuppance, right?
Yeah, no shit. You get fucked up.
I get fucked up. And it wasn't necessarily supposed to be like that. Originally, I was going to burn them. Originally, I was going to.
Yeah, sure. Historically, witches.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we were going to burn them, but that felt really.
In the metal scene today, so much has been done before that it's rare for bands to delight and surprise with their songwriting in a way that's not just a string of chaotic breakdowns. However, my guests today have managed to create something quite refreshingly different in a way that doesn't compromise the songwriting underneath it. So let's find out what's led to the creation of this very unique and brilliant band that, as I understand it, have only been releasing music for the last 5 months. And they're called GRINN. I'm joined today by Cam and Freddy. Thank you very much for being here. How do you start a metal band in 2024 as GRINN? What are the ingredients that led to the creation of this new group from yourselves?
Well, we started the project about 3 years ago. So the first Easier to Hurt was like the first single. And essentially, Freddie came and saw me perform at a gig right after lockdown in 2021, just hanging out as like friends after the show. He came around to my studio. We had like a little party and stuff. And I've always like been into metal music myself, and it's always been a part of me and my upbringing. And I just thought Freddie's like my only friend in Liverpool who actually like lives and breathes metal, like everyone else is doing other stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, we should like definitely get together and do some heavier stuff, because I'm always up for trying new projects and like writing and producing all that kind of stuff. And so after that chat, I put together the first demo for Easier to Hurt. I think it was like a couple of days later. I just sent
literally
Freddie.
The next day.
Yeah. I was like up all night being like, this could be something cool.
From scratch, like that night you created it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So like, I do write songs and I produce a lot. I mean, that's kind of my job. Do you know what I mean? So like, I'll tend to just like mull over ideas, play guitar, blah, 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 come up with like riffs and stuff or whatever. And I had this chord progression in mind, which was kind of like mad, and like started on this dung, 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 dung. And I was like, well, what if we just like chromatically go up? And then I literally demoed it in like 3 or 4 hours and just sent it over to Freddie. I probably got the original demo somewhere, so like if anyone in the comments wants to hear it, maybe we'll do like a little SoundCloud upload or something of like the first version. But yeah, that was it really. It was just a little experiment, and then me and Freddie decided to kind of put some time into it here and there over the coming months and being like, let's see what happens if we just put our demos together, like. And it just built from there. We didn't rush anything. We were just trying to enjoy the process, and we weren't trying to like put it in a particular box. We were just like, let's just make stuff that we like and stuff that we want to hear, and let's just go from there and see if we can come up with, you know, a certain amount of songs. And now we've got them. And
yeah, in terms of like starting a band in 2024. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. We both have our strengths and weaknesses. So it's a bit unfair to say we started this band from scratch, because we've had all this experience behind us. You know, we've been in bands since we were both teenagers. So
yeah,
we kind of, this is just the accumulation of all the mistakes we made in the past. And, let's not repeat some of those.
That makes sense to me, because one of the first questions I always think of when I hear a brand new band that comes out with sophisticated level of songwriting, but also the production value that you have, I'm like, this hasn't come out of nowhere. It's the same thing with bands like Gore that I interviewed recently and Unpeople. Like, there's a history of gigging and writing before that you kind of get out all the wrinkles and then you focus. But what's interesting what you said there is you seem to create an environment that was conducive to creativity and going like, well, this will be what it is. It's an experiment. And that allows you to maybe go off in a different direction that maybe others aren't doing and see where that leads. At what point did you think, let's put this together in a more official way? When did that kind of occur to you? Was that after that first song or was that further on?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I mean, we're both very much committed into doing something, having a serious project that we can both maintain in the long run. So straight off the bat, we wrote that. I mean, Cameron wrote Easier to Hurt and we kind of fleshed it out. And then I pitched some of my old demos to him. And like two or three songs later, we were like, okay, this is very much doable. Let's just hit the ground running. So we finished like 6 demos, and then we just immediately said, okay, well, we're going to release these, but we're going to do it properly instead of, just releasing the songs on SoundCloud and be like, here you go, which works great for some bands. Don't get me wrong, but
sure,
we've done all that, and now we're a bit more like, all right, let's try and do something a bit more sort of, something that requires a bit more of an investment. If that makes sense.
I could imagine that ups the excitement level when you've crafted it to that level, but also probably the nerves a little bit when you're releasing that first song and like, we put a lot into this. I really hope the reception's there. But had you kind of played it to mates and other people in the industry, and they're asking me like, is this something here?
It's definitely, I mean, I've been involved in like loads of different projects, as Freddie said, like growing up, like different bands and all this kind of stuff. And you always play the stuff to your friends and your family and blah, blah, blah. And you test it out and everybody says it's good. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's great, honey.
You play a song for your mum and she's gonna love it. But the thing is, with Grin, it was like a different kind of energy. It was a different energy with the feedback. Like, oh, this is really cool. Like, you should do this. Like, this is interesting and blah blah blah. I was like, there's nothing like fake about this.
Yeah, like I've had people message me that I don't normally speak to. Just be like, oh hey, Cameron showed me some of the tracks. This stuff is sick. And I'm just like, I haven't spoken to you in years, but yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that's a great indicator. Are you familiar with the band from the UK a while ago called Reuben? And Jamie
name rings a bell, but
okay, we band a while ago. But something similar. He was saying he's got pretty honest mates, and he's like, when I first showed them the Reuben songs, they said, "This doesn't suck," and he's like, "This is the most amazing thing I've ever created." It's like we're onto a winner.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's also like, I mean, I don't know about Cameron, but I don't really deal well with compliments. So whenever people compliment on my stuff, I just kind of I don't ignore it, but I'm just like, okay, I'm glad you like it, but it doesn't really mean much to me in the grand scheme of things. What matters to me is kind of results when we work with this. So the fact that before we had even released anything, we showed the songs to a couple people, and people were like actively messaging us back, and like we had interest from people in higher positions. That's when it's like, okay, that's how I know this has a bit more of a tangible sort of connection to people than just like, oh, it's good music.
Yeah,
that's amazing. That's fantastic. How validating that must have been. Now you alluded to things you've done before this band. In what was the style of music you were playing, Cam, when Freddie saw you at that gig? Was that also in the metal realm, or was that in other areas of genres?
No, dude, no, that was like some pop R&B thing I was doing for a while. So
right.
I long story short, I've been studying music my whole life. I've been doing loads of different things. I play drums. I was a drummer mainly when I was like in my teenage years, and like I was writing stuff for like a little punky prog thing when I was a teenager as well, which probably has evolved into what Grin is now. But yeah, like I've done all sorts, man. So the project that he saw was this thing called St. Louis, which I was doing, which was literally my attempt at doing like pop R&B type stuff. So like heavy vocal work. That's when I started working with Lindsay Ward as well from Espera. So I had this like 6-piece band. Freddie's actually in the music video for this song that I wrote called Debut, which is like, it's quite extravagant. It's an okay song, but even then, like I came from predominantly listening to like rock music, and like, when I was like 3 or 4 years old, my dad had like Dookie and fucking Nevermind playing, and then we'd have like the Beatles and stuff, and then when God Hates Us All came out by Slayer, Like, I remember one of my dad's friends just sticking that CD in my room as like a birthday. I was like 10 years old.
Oh my God.
And I was listening to God is this all? And then I also remember listening to Saint Anger with my dad and laughing at it as a kid and understanding why it was, why it was so terrible. So I've had I understand this genre well. But something told me, I think it was just partly being around like the pop industry quite a bit, because I'm a studio guy. I produce and I write a lot of pop music and a lot of stuff. Just that's my breadwinner at the end of the day. And I kind of strayed from the path of guitar music because I was like, well, there's nothing in it anymore. I sort of just lost all faith in it for some fucking reason. I don't know why. Sorry, I don't know if you can censor my swear words.
No. You can say whatever the fuck you like.
Yeah,
it's
okay,
fine.
good. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a break from rock music for a while. I was in a band called Native Kings, and that was going okay. But for some reason, there was like a hole in my heart, and I don't know why. And I felt quite lost. And so I was like, stop all that. I'm going to do like a pop project instead and see how it goes for a while. And then it was going okay. And then Grin started happening. And I was like, no, this is way better. This is where I belong. I felt like the St. Louis project was more like me putting on a face in order to be like, well, this is what you're supposed to do in order to, be a viral sensation or be a pop star or anything. But whereas like when I play guitar and I play riffs and like program drums, that's what I've been doing since I was like 10, 12 years old. And it's in me. And I understand the metal of our generation was like Lamb of God and Sugar and Arch Enemy and System of a Down and all that kind of stuff. And I disregarded that for such a long time. And now that I've come back to it, it's like, oh, this makes fucking sense. This makes sense. I'm not running from that anymore.
Yeah, it's changed so much since then as well. Like modern metal's just completely different.
I had no idea. Like I didn't know how far metal had come. I abandoned it.
You peeked back in and went, "Oh, anything's possible here."
Still going, and it's better than ever. And it's like,
yeah. I remember when you asked me, well, when we started doing this, I was like, "Oh, you should check out, Humanity's Last Breath. You should check out Loathe." I was like, "Holy shit, what is happening to metal nowadays?" It's great.
Freddie is the one who introduced me to Sleep Token, and this is like one we were like having conversations whilst we were putting the demos together, and he was like, yeah, there's this band called Sleep Token, they're like doing really well at the moment. I was like, oh, that rings a bell. Little did I know that like Lindsay was already doing freaking academy shows with them, and we had that connection there, right? Because like she's a friend of mine from a while back, and so I was like, oh yeah, Sleep Token, cool.
That's my friend's project.
Yeah,
are they doing okay?
Yeah, and it's like, oh right, like they
small clubs.
Great. Yeah, that's like metal's in a great place thanks to bands like them and like Loathe, as you said, and like you introduced me to Leprous as well and like all these other people. I just abandoned it, left my toys at like Gojira and like Watershed at Opeth. That's literally. I walked away after that and then started listening. I started, listening to more pop music and stuff and more jazz and broadening my horizons. But, you can't escape what you're meant to be. And I feel like rock music and smashing drums and riffs and all that kind of stuff is like, that still gets me going,
It's in your bones somehow. Yeah. But listen, I think you're feeling bad or somehow dismissive perhaps on what you did instead. But it is very admirable to become very good at something in a professional capacity that is also within music and the rest. And also, I have to imagine that what you've done over the time you spend away from metal means you've brought something fresh and different back to it. I'm not sure if you hadn't spent that time away, you'd be coming in with the vocal style that you have in this band, which is pretty unique for the genre, I'd say. And in fact, one of the people in my Discord was asking, Milana, what is your vocal background? Were you a choir boy when you were younger? It's so like crystal clear and incredible. Where's that coming from?
I could not sing when I was younger. I've always had like near perfect or perfect pitch. Like I've always been really good at being able to harmonize and stuff. And like my ears has been good since I was a kid because my dad made sure that I was just listening to weird music when I was a child. That's what happens, right? You just listen to weird music, you pick up and you understand things.
Second generation musician.
Yeah. Like both my parents are like musicians and wanted to be musicians in their life. They didn't like sign any deals or make any like huge records or anything, or they live humble lives now and they struggled. But like I've always been surrounded by that. But I never sung in the house. I was always terrified of singing in the house.
Wow.
I just thought this is the thing. I was really confused. I thought singing was just something that you could just do. So like when I started making demos and like recording in my dad's little backroom studio when I was like 14, I was just like, I'm going to sing and it's going to sound fine. And when I first recorded my voice, I was like, oh my God, it's like the worst thing ever. I had no power. I had like range because I was always listening to like Jeff Buckley and like Muse and Radiohead. And I would practice the high register, the falsetto. But I also remember when my voice broke properly, I had to like regain that back again over the course of like a year, even just singing to myself. Like I couldn't do it anymore. It was like a really awkward phase. So yeah, I wasn't singing much. My voice was awful. I could pitch, but my articulation and my power was next to nothing. I was singing in that other band, Native Kings, doing gigs live and stuff and trying to get better. Always writing songs that were outside of my vocal range. Like I've always been doing that, like a bad thing of mine, which is it's never been good. And that's my voice not being up to scratch is one of the reasons why I stopped doing Native Kings, because like I hated pushing myself. I hated ruining my voice. I hated not being able to hear myself on stage, technical things and like screaming and leaving, not being able to do more than like 2 or 3 days on the trot. Like you can't do that. And I just never had any coaching or anything like that. So I dropped it and I was like, I need to just figure out what the hell's going wrong with my voice. Because I know I can sing if I practice, but I'm just not practicing. Also, I was like drinking hella, like a lot and partying a lot in my 20s, which if you're drinking and you can't really sing and you think you're going to be a singer, you're an idiot. And that's what I was doing.
It's one hand behind your back.
Yeah, pretty much. You're just taking your voice is like this thing that you're trying to build and you're just smashing it with a hammer every weekend. Like that's quite literally what you're doing. So I've actually been like 4 years sober. And since then, my voice has definitely improved massively just from taking care of it. But also since I stopped doing like rock music between the age of, let's say, 25, 26 to the age of, for the last like 3 years up until the last 2 years. I know that sounds like just a bunch of numbers, but I learned how to sing properly and use my voice and breathe properly and all that kind of stuff. I haven't had any lessons. I had one lesson just to ensure that I was doing it right and not hurting myself. And the guy was like, "Well, does it hurt?" And I said, "No." And then he said,
so he's like, "Off you go then." Well, how do you learn without a structure, or is it just experimentation?
You listen to who you want to sound like, and you just go from there. Really, like you listen to. It's the same. Like if you want to learn how to play bass, you listen to Jack Pastorius.
Just a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, if you want to play drums, you want to listen to like Dave Grohl or Tony Rossi Jr. or like Mario Duplantier. Or if you want to be a jazz drummer, listen to Buddy Rich. So like if I want to be a rock vocalist, I'm like listening to like Jeff Buckley. I'm listening to Matt Bellamy. I'm listening to Freddy. I'm listening to.
I mean, these are big voices. No wonder you've got a bit. Because my problem, I suppose, is that I listen to a lot of Green Day. So the way I sing, this sounds like Billy Joe Armstrong. There's no power to it. It's kind of like, it's middling.
Yeah, it's great.
At least it wasn't just like mainlining Tom DeLonge. That would have been a lot worse.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of bands do that.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I was in the pop punk scene, so there was a risk of that. And I related to some of that you were saying, because I would write songs back when I was doing this. Outside of my register, I was the lead singer for some fucking reason and rhythm guitarist in a pop punk band. And I blew out my voice in the first gig because I couldn't sustain hitting the notes. And I had to go to like ears, nose, and throat doctor and get a camera down there. I had to rebuild it. And then basically just singing lower harmonies from then on. I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, everyone sort of learns these things differently. Like for me, it was just a matter of getting out and doing it. And I'm nowhere near the singer Cameron is, but just by virtue of, especially in these past 2 or 3 years, I'm just doing a lot of gigging outside of GRINN. And it's like literally every week I'm doing like 3 or 4 gigs where I'm singing for hours and hours, and I'm slowly learning by just, trial through fire. But that's just, I know that works for me, and that doesn't necessarily work for everyone.
Everyone learns differently. Yeah.
You've also got to be a control freak and very self-critical, I think.
Oh yeah,
helps.
I record a lot of my sets purely for my own feedback, and my partner, every time she sees me do that, she's like, "How do you do that? How do you listen to yourself and not like cringe?" I'm like, "I do, but it's It's constructive cringe. If I'm cringing too much, that's how I know I'm fucking up.
Yeah.
That is so, it's very hard to do, but that is great advice.
Just learn,
surprisingly.
No one's perfect. You're going to sound like shit at some point, but, just take it on the chin and be like, oh, that just means I have work to do, instead of letting it get you down.
And the reality is, everyone else at that gig hears the same thing. So you might as well hear it too and go, and I'm going to make it better next time.
But they're not going to hear the same way you are. They're going to be like, hey, that was great. I genuinely enjoyed that. And you'd be like, I'm glad you did. I know for a fact that that's not true because I heard differently. But hey,
Yeah. Most of the times I'd come off stage and was like, yeah, that was great. I'm like, well, I messed up the intro to this part. And they're like, they don't want to hear that. But I can't.
When people are complimenting you, it's mostly about them as opposed to you. Yeah. That's one thing that's helped me deal with people giving me compliments. It's just like, all right, cool. If you say so, I believe you. And I'm happy you enjoyed it. I'm gonna go home and cry later, anyways.
You just gotta say thank you.
Yeah,
and then whatever.
Fair enough. I heard you use the word chromatic earlier, which is another marker that makes me think, yes, I'm hearing sophistication in the melodies of your songwriting. There's more than just like, we're just fucking around. There's something quite seemingly sophisticated about some of the things that you're deciding to do. How much of it, if you could put a ratio on it, is like messing around, experimentation if you're jamming to the rest, and how much is, wouldn't it be cool if we constructed this melody in this way, for example?
So
I think it's mostly the latter.
Yeah. It's one of the traps of learning about music theory is making everything about music theory. And the best part of making music is stumbling into things and accidentally bonking your head on an idea and going, whoa, that's cool. Having those both run along and aside like each other is difficult, but that's why we work together. Because if I come up with something, even if it is like a fruity chord progression, and I'm like, oh, this could be great, this is like interesting and unexpected, Freddy will be like, let's make it more unexpected. Wow. It's almost too linear. And even if it's not, and I feel like that's what you got to try and search for. Like if you're a composer or a writer, you have to search for that childlike wonder that you had when you first started doing it. Because if anybody goes back to their early demos, it will be simple riffs and like chords and stuff and blah, and like I just want to do it. And I think you have to kind of retain that if you're going to write, and a lot of it comes down to that. I mean, Victor Wooten said like theory is how you should use theory to get yourself out of corners if you feel like you're stuck. Only then. Like you could be like, oh, okay, well, should we go to this chord? Oh yeah, we could do that. For now, placeholder, let's just do that. But you've got to find the weirdness. You've got to like experiment, even if you are like a fucking nerd like I am. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like, I think this is where like we Cameron and I differ, is that I'm very much a first instinct kind of person. I struggle to like expand on ideas, so most of the time I just want to put it down and then deal with it later. Whereas Cameron is a bit of a perfectionist in that he'll rewrite the same part over and over and over again because he's as much better ear than me, and he's much more tuned to playing around with ideas. So that's kind of what resulted in the sound that you hear on these songs. It's just a lot of just playing around with ideas and melodies until we find something that we like. Yeah. And then inevitably 2 weeks later, Cam would be like, oh, I actually changed it because I was playing around with it some more, which is, no, it's fine. Like,
you're like, but it was perfect.
I got beat with it. Like, no, like it's never a case of it's very rarely a case of making things worse. You'll always come up to me and like, oh, do you like this idea? I'm like, to me, it's not much better than it is before.
100%.
But it's like, it's still
sounds great.
Solid.
It's
still solid. Okay. And if you prefer it, fuck yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, we would have like agreed on like an idea, and then I'll send over 3 options.
Yeah.
Like, what about this one, this one, this one? With option A, you get a little trilly bit at the end. With option B, you get a growl. Option C, like we change the chord, and then we do like a breakdown. Which one do you want?
Yeah.
But with all for you was actually like
just completely different from the original demo.
All for You was never intended to be like one of the lead singles. Like it just wasn't. It was an idea that Freddy originally had in like a Logic demo, from which I took 1-2 bar loop. That
wasn't even there initially.
Wasn't it like a fill? It was like a guitar.
No, we came up with that in the studio together.
Which bit? Are you talking about the pre-chorus?
The
rhythm
main
bit?
the main
like
riff,
the intro riff.
Oh, right, yeah.
The main idea had all of this, it's all for you in the chorus, and then eventually that became that. The chords eventually changed over time. Maybe the feel for the feel for the verse was the same.
That bit in the pre-chorus.
Yeah, that's it.
But yeah, I just sort of Frankenstein that shit together. Like the chorus, the chorus was like, you can hear it though in the song. The song is manic, and you know, as you've said, it can feel a bit jarring, but it's like it was the struggle of like making that verse work and then going to the chorus by having like these different like meter feels. So that, you know, it's going from like to it doesn't, they don't seem too far away from each other.
No, there's a transitional thread within it that helps it tie it together.
Well,
I've sent it to a couple other folks like Drew Fortune, Metal Burb, to check out. They're like, I like this is great, but they've also like that chorus really comes in kind of out of nowhere. And like on first listen, yes, but the more I hear that song, and I honestly, I've looped that song on its own at least 50 times. That song, when you know what's coming, it's fucking gold. The transitions, I'm ready for the first note of the chorus, and it just absolutely pummels through. I think probably because you've threaded it in that slight doubling the rhythm, then into it. Totally works.
That's it. So like this was something that I brought to Freddy on like the day we were recording the drums. I was like, I figured it out. We're gonna like foreshadow the rhythm in a couple of bars before to make the listener sort of ready for it, because it was going ding 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 gat ding ding da 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 da, which is like two different feels. You're almost in like a fast 12/8.
It would take you
from like a 6
a bar and a half to go like, oh, I'm here now.
Yeah, and then we just used the which is like a rhythmic refrain that's now kind of in the whole song, which makes sense.
Yes, I noticed that in the kick pattern later on as well, but like slower.
Yeah, so these are things that we just evolved with the songwriting, and I feel like I'm just going with my gut, thinking that, okay, this makes sense, and I want to make sure the listener understands, and we're having like a conversation with them as we're composing it, and we are feeding them things through, and there are themes in there building. It's not just random stuff, because if you broke it down, I could justify why I use those ideas. You know what I mean? Even like from like the journey of the melody, you know, it starts down here and it goes like that, and then it there is an arc to it. It's just complicated, and it's it's like, it's not just like random stuff, but it does feel like that. I understand.
And even the chorus, the main vocal melody, it's unusual, and it's one long sentence, and it sort of doesn't loop, right? It's one arc, but once you know it's there, you enjoy the ups and falls of it. How did that come about? How do you even think, like, because that, I would think if I was writing that song, I'd be like, this is a risk.
Yeah.
You know?
I think the original melody was a bit simpler, but then as the harmonies came into play, then the main line kind of weaved its way around it.
The original chord progression was different as well.
Yeah.
The original chord progression was just two chords going down like minor thirds, and it was cool. It wasn't like it was just a much more simpler rendition of that, and it sounded okay. It could have been good, but this one's way better. But I don't know at what point we came up with the chord progression. Somewhere down the line in the composition of it. Again,
one of your three options. Try these.
Yeah, we were looking for something that like felt out the box and resolved awkwardly, and just had this kind of, because I feel like if it wants to feel malformed, because there's something like sinister about if you distort harmony in that way, you can come up with something that's genuinely a bit creepy and off, and I feel like ties in with metal well, and I think it's something that isn't often used in metal. It is if you're black metal, just parallel minors, whatever, dissonant, but like you can create something that's like makes you feel sick. You can create something that makes you feel like, oh, that's like weird, and there's like kind of like an otherworldly sort of darkness to that, and I quite like that. But yeah, it was just I wrote it 4 or 5 times. I genuinely did. Like I said before, it was like, which one do you like, Freddie? I think I sent him 2 or 3 SoundCloud demos, and then that was the one which I was like, I don't think I can fault that. I think that's the melody that I prefer out of all the other ones. And Freddie was like,
which one do you prefer, Freddie, and why is it this one?
It's like, you're the one who has to sing it, dude. I don't care, whatever. So yeah. So that's it. Yeah, it's just like we chiseled away at it, and out of all the songs, that's the one that's taken the longest to get right. Which is all, you know, it's sort of like the anti of what you hear a lot. Oh yeah, sometimes the song just comes and it's great, and you don't have to think about it. Blah, blah,
sometimes
blah.
They do, and sometimes they don't. Both can be wonderful.
Yeah, I think I'm up for working all night on a song until 5 a.m. Like, I've done that. I don't know.
And Freddie's like, I'll see you in the morning, and then I'll
keep him company. Like, absolutely. It's just like, it's so counterintuitive to the way I naturally work on my own. Like, sometimes, I'll mediate the fuck out of a song and I'll spend hours on it. I mean, especially when I was younger, I had more sort of internal patience for that. Whereas nowadays, I'm just like, I just find myself more easily bogged down to that sort of kind of songwriting. Unless something clicks and I'm like in the zone, then yeah, absolutely. But it's just different approaches. I think
makes sense.
That's why we work well together.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, it's like a tug of war between you, and in the middle you find a sort of balance of the both. And then what you might find is some songs, one of you wins the tug of war, and then that makes that song very different and interesting as a result. But
and like, you know,
the flavors of both of you.
And when Cameron's working on this stuff, if I'm free, if I don't have work to do, I'll stick around and I'll help him through little things. But yeah, I mean, otherwise he's gonna change things later down the line anyways, which is fine. Just fine.
I'm only trying to service the song though. I'm
exactly.
Just trying to make it the best it can be. It's not like we've never been in the situation where it's like, oh, I want this idea because it's my idea. And
no.
You know, we wouldn't be able.
That way is the death of creativity.
We're already too old to
bicker about this shit.
Yeah, it's like
gone past the like old married couple stage.
Yeah, it's like, okay, if you're gonna state your idea, why is it better? How does it function in the song better?
Yeah,
I think it's going to do this, and I think live it will go down well. I think we need a little bit of this in this song because we've got loads of this already. The last song we just recorded is a bit too much that way, so let's just do this now. Let's try it out and see. You know, it's a very much positive, creative building as opposed to like.
It's like if we're really bickering on an idea, eventually one of us will relent, and then it's not like the other one's going to, you know, mope about it. It's like, all right. You know, like if Cameron won an argument for the sake of simplicity, then I'm not going to be like, stupid Cameron. I'll be like, all right, well, now that we're only with that idea, what can we do to make it better? Like, it's not a place for ego at all.
Good. That sounds healthy, very mature. And clearly it's working thus far.
Yeah.
Cam, you mentioned there's a sort of an unsettling, sickly feeling at times you've baked into that song in particular. But I think there's a bit of a thread throughout your songs thus far. There's a darkness and a sinister element to that, and even the name Grin. I wonder what was behind that name. How much of I don't know if I want to ask this question, but like I'm curious to what all for you is about, because there's something about like clearing someone off the headlights and cat's eyes. It sounds like you've run someone over for their own good. I don't really know what's going on, but how much of what's gone into the tone of what you're writing lyrically and also sonically?
Well, for that one specifically, it was just kind of a bleak and morbid insight into issues like domestic violence and abuse. One of the main ideas we had when we first started writing the lyrics for these songs was to just kind of use that as a means for us to explore, like, you know, unpleasant topics, to say the least. But not in a way that, you know, don't want to glorify any of this shit or anything like that. It's just a matter of like, it's just a way for us to like discuss these things that unfortunately do happen. That's probably the most like direct example of that.
It's like we wanted to write songs that are essentially exposing and verbalizing like the kind of more embarrassing aspects of humanity and the stuff that people don't really want to talk about, because like, you know, going, oh, I'm going to write a song about like abuse. It's like, oh, fucking hell. Like, how are we going to market that? It's like, well, I don't know.
that's not our job.
Yeah. Do it anyway.
That's just what we're going to do.
Yeah. It's like
art. Fucking deal with it.
Yeah. It's headline is apparently is part of your
part of the palm.
So like your breath on my palm. As I wipe the Chanel off your headline, it's like basically.
I thought it was headlights. I misheard it.
No,
Like
it's like
just
having your hand on someone.
I see.
Someone's mouth, and then because people are familiar with the idea of like a power play in like a relationship. It doesn't even have to be like a loving relationship, but like it's hurting me more than it hurts you. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a romantic relationship. It could just be somebody who's like punishing somebody from a position of power for the sake of doing it, like almost I know better than you, like how like no one could love you as much as I love you, that's such a it's something that
sort of love,
yeah. It's like when the abuser says something like that, it's like they think they're justified, they think they're doing something good for that person, but the victim is like trapped in that. And I felt like I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. And funnily enough, the video twists it on its head. The video completely twists the narrative. So it's sort of like the girls get their comeuppance, right? Like
yeah, no shit. You get fucked up.
I get fucked up. And it wasn't necessarily supposed to be like that. Originally, I was going to burn them. And then they were going to like... Originally, I was going to
yeah, sure. Historically, witches?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We were going to burn them. But that felt really... it was too hard, too expensive. We are an independent band, and we've done this on like the most shoestring budget with the most...
But it looks good. It looks high quality, man.
Well, that's Jay, man. Jay's a genius. And Jay Chow is the guy who's behind all the videography and the cinematography. He's like phenomenal. But yeah, we were going to burn them, and then Jay and I came up with this idea to like, well, what's doable? Drowning's probably more doable. How about we make it so like if they're going to be involved in the song properly as like features, like we could get them to like get back at you or something. Because you could almost say, like, when Freddy's doing the exorcism, it cuts through the story quite quickly in the video. You could almost relate that to this is hurting me more than it hurts you. I know best for you. I'm going to take the demons out of you and blah, blah, blah. There's sort of like this, you're implying that, like, the witches are inherently evil.
Yeah.
But there's actually, apart from when Lindsay bludgeons Freddy to death, there's no indication that they are like evil. They're just like, maybe they're just trying to go about their day, and we're trying to, take their witchy ways away from them.
Fair retaliation.
We're taking their freedom away. So, it's in that particular song, it's quite bleak. But again, Silence is bleak as well. Silence is about suicide. Silence is about, it's about wanting to like... It's about wanting to...
Yeah, just want to kill yourself.
You don't need to explain that one.
No. It's just a metaphor for that, like...
It's like, here's the thing. We're not psychologists. We don't know shit about any of these things. This is our way of processing these the horrific things that happen in life. But really, some of the songs are about heartbreak. Again, we've all experienced heartbreak to some degree. It fucking sucks. Fucking write songs about it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be real. And like, it's like, oh yeah, you're singing about that. Oh, damn. So it's like it's like the meme of like the guy with the eyes, and he's just, he's been up all night with a cigarette. And he's like,
but I think there's something viscerally connective about that. You're shining a light on the part of humanity that we don't want to look at, and we probably should if we have any hope of trying to better ourselves in society and the rest. If we don't look, then the things are just going to fester and get worse, right?
That's where the name comes from. So it's like the grin, it's like from Grin and Bear It, right? So grin is like the smile everyone puts on to sort of deal with everyday life and everyday trauma and, wars going across the world. And like, we just go, I'm going to get along with my life now and pretend that these things aren't happening. My neighbor could be a serial killer, or, people dying, or there's sickness and all that kind of stuff. And human beings have this amazing ability to just get on with it. You just get on with shit. There's like a darkness and a lightness to that, like a lot of us we numb ourselves in these, when we're trying to deal with these things. And some of us, we make a conscious effort to push on in order to overcome these things. So there's like a balance there. And I feel like that's something I like realized recently, actually. That, it's not just all doom and gloom. There is a light as well. And there's like the will of humanity is rooted in that concept, I feel. So Yeah.
Yeah, there's almost like an absurdist element to this whole, like, look at all this gross shit that's happening in humanity and in our everyday life. But what are you gonna do? You know, life goes on.
Jam out with some sick riffs.
Exactly.
Exactly. Make music.
But you're right, because my assumption there immediately is like, well, there's the now, we've got our blinders on, we're not paying attention, which is part of it, sure. But also, there's something to be said about, well, the survivalism within us to try and push on and try and carry on despite the difficulties that we face. There's kind of two sides to a coin. That's the tug of war within it. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Now, Espera's feature in All For You especially, but I had noticed when I was listening to one of those songs, like, sounds like there's a female vocal in here, and someone had mentioned that they're kind of all over the EP. How much have they been involved in the songwriting, or is that when they come into recordings, you can then kind of play around and try different harmonies and versions of things?
Well, we wrote everything, and then Lindsay was one of the first people. Lindsay Ward from Espera. She's like the main witch in the video. She's been a friend of mine for a while, as I mentioned, working with her since I was in the other project. In fact, when we started working together on that, they just started building up some momentum with Sleep Token. She was like, "Oh, I'm in this band called Sleep Token. They're doing quite well at the moment around like the local metal scene. Like, we're doing the gigs with them, wear masks and stuff." It was still early days. I put it in the back of my mind and just like,
yeah. That sounds weird. Anyway,
don't want to do that. But yeah, so no, we spent a couple of days at my studio and just recorded the BBs on top. I spent a lot of one of my specialities in my studio life and my writing life is like doing big vocal arrangements and stuff. And me and Lindsay, obviously, like when we get together, we bounce ideas off very, very quickly. So it was just a case of us doing the entire EP in this 2-day slot. We did 3 songs a day, more or less.
Bloody hell.
And then, yeah. It's like long days. I mean, we paid them, so yeah.
I think 3 songs in a day is pretty fucking good. Like, there has to have been a long day. That's chunky.
Yeah, so we got them to like double track all of our choruses. We got them to do occasional harmonies on like verses and stuff like that. And then with All For You, it just felt like there was so much of them as part of like the tonality of those verses. They were so prominent and they were filling that gap, because arrangement wise there's nothing in there apart from like a bit of like this pumping bass and vocal. So it's like, well, when people listen to this, they're obviously going to know that there's like females there. Like that's going to be there. It's like, oh, what is Grin then? So like it made sense for us to like have them as a female. And obviously they obliged. They were more than happy to help us. I mean, like we owe a lot to Espera at this early stage anyway, because like if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have had this little like bump into like the metal sphere, like the internet metal sphere. Like,
probably wouldn't be doing this podcast.
Exactly, yeah. If it wasn't for them, like they've really helped us. And Lindsay's believed in the music since day one. She was one of the people being like, "Cam, you have to do this. You have to do this. This is really good. You need to do this. Like you're coming out swinging here if you do this right." And so that's it really. And they came in, did All For You, and then maybe it was probably like just over a year ago they were here. Yeah, it was
November. Yeah,
it was my birthday. My birthday last year, November. That was that weekend, and we did it. And then less than a year later, it's out and about and chasing witches,
but not burning them. Good job. Yeah, I can see how. I mean, certainly because when I found out about it, I'm lucky enough to have people sending me songs to check out all the time for the channel, and I check out a bunch of them, especially if it's a new band. I'm always interested in what's going on here, because I want to see what the new creative brains are doing. But then, I mean, I was already committed to doing it. It's like, oh, and featuring Espera, I'm like, interesting. But the risk there is expectation went chunk. Like, okay, this is maybe more serious. Certainly delivered on that. I'm interested in a couple of sonic things you've done in Silence. It starts out, there's kind of like a sort of it's like an individual palm muted guitar string or something. There's a siren noise that comes in, the kind of main thematic thing that happens there, and throughout the song, what is that? How did you make that? Is that a guitar bend with an effect on it, or is that something completely different?
Could be a guitar with just a buttload of synths.
There is. It's like we did like a sort of Gojira type pinch harmonic thing. We have to like just say Gojira. We just like stole from them, but It's also a synth. Yeah, it's like just a distorted. Like if there are any sound designers or producers listening, you can just make like a room reverb, distort the fucking signal as shit, and then just have like probably something like a high sine wave sounding synth, so like a round sound that you distort, and then you just pitch bend it, and it because it has that kind of almost vocal.
It rises and falls.
Yeah.
Jarring about it when it comes in, but it's so warm and rounded and well formed. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, we
just loads of distortion. Distortion sounds so nice.
Wow. And poking it a lot so it sounds good in the mix. You know, you can't just distort something and it's going to sound good. You got to EQ it. You got to do it right. You have to poke things in the frequency so it's not too harsh. And yeah, but it's a guitar and a synth, basically.
Very cool. And then I think I asked something about this at some point. How are you going to do what you're going to do live? You're going to have, I presume, a backing track, especially if you want the backing vocals to come in, unless you manage to secure Espera when they're not touring with the rest. They seem pretty busy, even beyond Sleep Token. They seem like they've got a lot going on. Yeah. What's your plan for live shows with this band?
Well, the good thing with us is that because the music is so sort of complex, we can kind of do whatever we want. So we can keep it simple. We can just keep it as a 3-piece and have everything else on backing track for smaller shows or smaller tours to keep, budget cost, to keep costs down and whatnot. But if we were to do a bigger show at some point down the line, we can get session musicians in for the night and have like a, 5, 6, 7-piece band if we wanted to.
Yeah. Sure.
For now, for the foreseeable future, to keep things simple and effective and punchy, we keep things as a 3-piece. Cam does like normal guitar and most clean vocals. And I use a baritone guitar for all the low tune stuff and all the growly vocals, drummer, and then everything else on backing tracks.
Yeah.
Now you had a gig coming up end of this year in Camden. Unfortunately, that's got cancelled. Do you have any? Oh! I was so looking forward to that. So that would have been your first gig. So you've not gigged in this particular band before. You've obviously done tons in the past, but as you would, I'm assuming, know from your past, there'd be a few gigs probably before you're feeling comfortable and gelling with the live performance of these songs and things. How much of that is playing on your mind, and how much you just going to rehearse the fuck out of it before a first gig, or is that something you're concerned at?
We've done a couple of little shows here and there, not trying to scream about them too much, because obviously, like, we want to have a headline show and we want people to be like, bam, we want
come out swinging.
Yeah, we want it to count when people actually give us their money. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if it's like a £10 note, like that's a lot for these people to come down from their house and like spend the night listening to like 50 minutes of our music. So there's a lot of prep going into it. Like, so we're doing these little shows here and then just to test the waters, seeing what's going wrong, seeing what's right. And,
troubleshooting, all that.
We had a show in Manchester about 3 weeks ago, which went really well. There's a promotion called Leaf Promotions who are really helping us out with like these small shows.
Nice.
We got one in Liverpool in just under 2 weeks.
Oh shit! Yeah, we do. Yeah, we got a gig in Liverpool in 2 weeks.
Okay, so you're putting some reps in. Great.
Yeah. We're doing it.
But I mean, it helps that we're professionals, not to toot our own horn, but Tim on drums, he's a regular session guy. He gigs like 5-6 times a week. He knows his stuff. He's insane. He's gigged with like Nova Twins and got on tour with them and all that. I personally gig like 4 or 5 times a week as well with other projects and other things and work. So we're pretty confident in what we're doing. It's just a matter of we get in these live shows just to fine tune our things and kind of help us develop our own live identity before any big shows or any big sort of touring commitments.
Yeah,
fair. And even though you've got a lot of reps and you're playing constantly live currently, there is something different about maybe you haven't necessarily that often played the coordination of what you do in the guitar along with the vocals and screams, and it's getting that muscle memory in.
Yeah, definitely. And there's only so much you can do in rehearsal. Then when you take it live, it becomes a whole different thing. Adrenaline's pumping and all that stuff.
You're like, I can't hear my guitar the way I thought I could in rehearsal. Shit, I need to work around
this. You'll be rehearsing 5-6 times and your gear works perfectly. And the second you start your first song is like, I've broken every string in existence. What is happening?
We did have a moment, didn't we, in the first gig where
think Freddy just like hit a button and it just killed his pedal board for like the second song.
Yeah, I was just
Luckily,
like, oh
God.
Luckily, it was like in a verse where there was a quiet bit, and it kind of obviously because it's brand new music, nobody knows what the hell it is.
Yeah.
So we have that to sort of fall back on, but that was quite funny.
Yeah.
I kept on singing. I was like, this is perfect.
Again, I've done it long enough to know that like when issues arise, how to deal with them. Just look cool, pretend nothing's happening. Just let me just turn this back
Style it out. Even
No
if
one
they
knows.
did know the songs, you'd be like, oh, hey, they're doing this differently.
Yeah,
live. Okay,
exactly.
who's this?
Exactly.
That's the spirit.
Because there's also a thing to be said about maybe you try without any backing vocals and tracks
Who
and
knows
just
what
see
happened.
what is the raw, two guitars, drums, and vocals. What does that sound like for a particular song?
It's crazy. Like I was watching I went to download like two or 3 years ago, and Korn was playing. And when I was a kid, I loved Korn. I remember I watched all their live shows and all that. And I haven't seen them obviously in like 10, 12 years at that point. And they played all their hits, but they like all the arrangements are completely different. And thinking back, I was like, oh my god, yeah. Every tour they do, they just kind of completely rearrange all their songs somehow, or maybe just the endings, or they do like new segues, and they're always trying to make things new. I'm like, that's so cool. Like that's something I want to do instead of just doing the same songs over and over again with no variety. So
100%.
making these mistakes, it's actually an intentional thing, really.
Of course, yeah. It's all part of the creative process.
Also, watching bands, I love watching bands and having something fuck up on stage. That's how not because I'm like, screw you guys.
You're just taking notes. What did they do? Did it work?
Also, but it's like that's how you truly test like what a band is made of, how they deal with crisis when it happens. It's I don't know. I just get like such a good feeling, like, oh yay, some like fun. Now this is where the real fun begins, but not in a mean way. But
no, for sure. Yeah, but that's also the beauty of things that are live. I love when things are live because there's an element of danger to it. There's a realness. I don't know if you find this yourself, but if I go to see a live band at the level of the Killers, for example, which played Reading many, many years ago, it was perfect. It was a perfect performance. Sonically and visually, they nailed it. And I came away going, it's like listening to the album on loud. It doesn't feel live.
Yeah. Yeah, even like in terms of the performance, they can, even if they sound like perfect, but as long as they're doing something on stage, I'm a huge fan of Devin Townsend, for example, and all his shows sound impeccable. But because the way he is and like the way he sets up his shows, like they always seem organic because there's always something different going on every show. He fucks around with the audience and stuff like that. It does have even a improvisational tone to it.
Yes. Something like the band you mentioned earlier, Muse. I mean, they are fucking impeccable and incredible live. But Matt Bellamy's not playing the same thing every night. There's a rawness to this, the solos and how he's running around the stage. That gives it a bit more of that organic feel.
Yeah, he's also, he's a special dude as well. Even regardless of how you feel about where Muse have gone in terms of when you got into them, because I'm sure that's one of the main things of them. Like, I loved them for like the first 3 albums, maybe 3.5 albums.
Same.
Like, he's clearly an exceptional guitarist. He's one of the best guitarists that the UK has like had in the last 30 years, man.
Yeah, no one really gives him the credit for that, I would say. Despite the fact he would rip out mad solos whilst running across the stage and doing a forward roll and not missing a note. Like, what the fuck, man? That's insane. But also his vocals are unbelievable and the songwriting is insane as well.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, Origin of Symmetry was amazing. What a cracking album. Now, you, as I understand it, you're based in London and Liverpool. How does that work?
That's my fault, really. It's London and Liverpool because I spend half my time in London, half my time in Liverpool, and I live.
Is that through producing gigs, essentially?
Yeah, essentially. So I work in studios in London, where my dad still lives with like my sister and my stepmom, and then I come up here and like finish songs and do GRINN and stay in my studio here. So yeah.
Freddy, are you based in Liverpool then yourself?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. And the session drummer also Liverpool, or?
Yeah.
Okay, so at least the rehearsal is not a mad overhead.
No, exactly. So it's all right. I think Espera is also mostly based in Liverpool.
Yeah, around here.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Northwestish area. So like we both went to uni and we studied music together here in Liverpool. This is kind of where most of our connections are. So
hence why we know so many musicians who like would like playing and stuff.
Yeah.
So we got like critics as well, when we're showing this music to people, like people who know music.
Oh yeah, some people are just like, this is not it, or what? They're just critical of it. Or yeah, because you said studied music. The only thing I know of in Liverpool is that Lipa. Did you go to that?
Lipa.
Or something?
Yeah, that's
Lipa.
right.
Yeah. Interesting. I probably wouldn't have got in, but I looked at that as a possibility because I've been a drummer primarily, but also other instruments here and there. Not as good as my drumming, but my concern was, what if they teach me the exact way to do it, and I will never have the freedom of like fucking around and coming up with my own thing. I don't think I would have been that good a student for that to be a risk.
Honestly,
but that's kind of thing.
Like, I mean, I can't speak for other universities, but for us, they kind of taught us very, very little in a good way. It was essentially 3 years of us getting together, them putting a bunch of young musicians together in a room and say, all right, 3 years, do whatever you want. You have access to studios. Wow. You have access to like all these other musicians. Go nuts.
They give you the opportunity to fuck up.
Yeah.
Majorly.
That's awesome.
And then hopefully by the end of 3 years, you kind of know what you're doing.
Yeah. I don't know what the course is like now, but when we went, it was very much, you kind of get out of it what you put into it. So
they also have like extensive like composition and like harmony classes, and like they do teach you theory, and they do teach you how to use music production software. And there are like crash courses in that. Which are beneficial, and they have instrument courses as well for voice, drums, guitar, saxophone, whatever you want. They have that. They have orchestras. They have blah blah blah. But the main, if you want to be in a band, they will basically just say, go and do shows, write as many songs as you can, figure out how to make your stuff pop. Like
you work with other producers,
how to do it yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of what we're doing now, I guess. Only took us like 10 years after graduation.
Yeah, but whatever.
All part of the process. And again, like before, your music wouldn't sound the way it did, I don't think, without the time you spent away from rock and the rest. Are you then in your home studio, I presume, doing producing things for all of Grinn's work, or is that also being worked on in other studios or other areas, other mixers, or is that all yourselves?
It's all us. So we
fucking hell.
Yeah. So we recorded the drums at Motor Museum, which is quite a well.
You say recorded because most people just will program these days with excellent samples, and if you have a drummer brain, you can make that work. But
we have considered it, but then we thought, we know Tim, he was great, and so like it wouldn't have been that much of a financial burden for us to just record the drums live.
Wow,
definitely worth it as well. I think like it makes a difference in metal and rock music because so many people do have access to triggers. And yeah, I've got like, really good samples because it's literally my job to like produce music. So I have, the best stuff, but it's never the same. Like you have to undo your demo-itis when you're redoing the drums because like, for example, we've got like another project, which we're about to go into the studio again for in February, which we can talk to you about. But yeah, we record that first in Motor Museum with Tim. We edited it there, and then we redid all the guitars and bass that were on the SoundCloud demo. So we had like 6 SoundCloud demos for the EP. Threw it over to Tim. He was like, "Sound, I learned this." Then he learned it. We recorded it, and then I spent my time. I mean, we recorded it back in March last year.
Yeah,
that was when the drums started coming together, and then throughout my trying to weave in time to like finish it off whilst doing other productions, I like mixed the drums together. It was my first time doing like mixing live drums. So
Good Lord.
It was challenging, but there's no sample replacement, by the way.
Fucking hell. Like, this is unfair on other bands. Like, that is such high quality, honestly.
There's no sample.
Again, it helps that we got like a great recording from the start. Tony Draper was the one who engineered the drum recording. He's like very good at what he does.
He's exceptional.
It's so tight and present. It's
but again, that's what we have the advantage of, like not only knowing him, but also being here in Liverpool, where there's so many insane musicians, and like even the studio we use, Motor Museum, isn't like a particularly like huge studio or anything, but because it's run by people who know their shit, it sounded great.
Yeah, it's not exactly state of the art, but Bring Me the Horizon did their 3rd album there, I think. The one with the umbrella on it.
Oh yeah, that's the Spirit. Is that what it's called?
But yeah, they recorded their drums there, which I believe might have been mixed by Al, who owns it. Yeah, it's kind of like a rundown place. Like it's just got gear everywhere. It's like a little bit dusty. It's a simple control room, but that live room sounds amazing for drums. So that's why we went there. And yeah, then we just like
everything else was ourselves except the mastering, which was Jens Borgen. But
he was responsible for some of probably
like literally
metal records.
Yeah, every metal band in existence in some capacity. But yeah, that was mainly just because we needed, and we appreciated like another set of years on to put a final stamp on our thing, really. But otherwise, yeah, we did everything ourselves.
The artwork was done by Aphrodite Patolidou, who is an opera singer who used to sing with Igor. She's great. She did all the artwork. She's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, you're in a great place, because if you can do all of that stuff yourself, then the world's kind of your oyster. You can experiment all you want and put together any songs you want and make it the way that you want it to be. The only risk to it, I suppose, is your own perfectionism. That's the only
and our time, like obviously becomes it's so time consuming having to do every little aspect of even just releasing an EP ourselves. Excuse me. But then again, if we're looking to attract the interest of like potential manager, potential booking agents or record labels or anything like that in the future, they appreciate that more than anything. A band who can show that they can do these things themselves.
Yeah, because then you can work with empathy with the people they'll provide to help take some of that away from you. Like you'll understand what goes into it, and you can work better as a team with folks. You then have the language to understand all that and collaborate.
Yeah.
Nice. Very, very exciting. Now, who are you listening to today? Who are your kind of picks for what you're checking out in the current modern world that you think are awesome? Either massive bands you're enjoying or any of the one that you think is under the radar that are pretty great.
I've been struggling to, like, every time I open Spotify, I'm just like, oh, the fuck do I listen now? And I just kind of go to my usual favorites. Been listening to a lot of punk. Been listening to a lot of there's a band called Four Stroke Baron, like a prog metal band. They're like Devin Townsend, but sung by the guy from Tears for Fears. Like that's what they sound like. It's really weird shit. Otherwise, I'm really into like I've been obsessed with Igor for the past couple of years. Bands like Leprous, Vola, that kind of modern prog metal stuff.
Nice. Cam?
I'm really terrible with like listening to new music.
Yeah.
So I generally just
Freddy's like,
no, not yet. Like I agree, I'm also that bad.
Yeah. So I if I'm like at the gym or running, I'll try and like listen to something new. I might just put on like the deathcore playlist on Spotify and see what happens. I like drum and bass quite a lot. I was listening to King Crimson's Discipline album a lot recently. That's really good. I like Genesis, I like Peter Gabriel, I like Kate Bush, I like old English stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I will listen to anything, but like maybe it's because I make music all the time. I don't really sit down and like use music to relax. Do you know what I mean? It's not like if I'm listening to music, I'm listening. It's like a task for me. I have
active thing.
Yeah,
you have the same curse I do, where I think it's a curse but a blessing for what I do on YouTube. When I hear a song for the first time, I don't hear the song and then it finishes. I literally, in my head, I visualize every part, every drum hit on the kit, every guitar line, every bass line, synths, reverb, and the rest. It's a curse, but also it's kind of, I love the details of it. You have the same thing, I suppose, as a producer. You'd be like, oh, they did that, chained sequence thing on that.
Yeah, it's all of that stuff, man. It's a lot of the new music that I listen to is mainly reference material for whatever artists I'm working with in the studio that day. So the other day it was like Chappell Roan, and we were listening to Casual, and I was like, oh, this is a good song. This is really cool. I can see why everybody likes this person.
Mm-hmm.
And then, a few years ago, maybe it was just like listening to like loads of Bruno Mars or Kirk Franklin. I love Kirk Franklin. I do listen. I was well into gospel music for like 2021. It was like most listened to was like gospel music and death metal.
Of course, very similar.
Yeah. But high level musicianship, music, extreme music genres. You know what I mean? Because gospel music is extreme. It's very like super well played, amazingly produced, top of the range performers, bassists, guitarists, vocalists. They're insane. They're absolutely unbelievable. And the same on the other side, you've got Humanity's Last Breath, which is like uber produced, crazy mixes, the most extreme kind of like, you know, black and death metal you can find. I just like stuff that's super stimulating, you know, and anything really.
Well, that clearly goes into the secret sauce that makes the unique sound that GRINN have, and that's awesome. Now, the last question from Discord. Nis asked, when are you releasing merch? He's thirsty.
We're working on that now. So we got some shirts that just arrived last week. And then we ordered a couple of other bits and bobs, some beanies and like badges, and we're probably going to come up with some other stuff. We just need to finalize our website. God knows when that'll be, but we will aim to sell these things at our shows. Definitely.
Cool.
Whenever those will be.
Another thing to take time and DIY and set up. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, like I've always been in charge of merch for like other bands I've been in, so it's a ball ache, but you know, someone's got to do it. But on that note, if anyone has any ideas of things they particularly want to see, by all means, if someone wants to wear a GRINN thong, sure, just let us know. We'll make it happen.
Put it in the comments. We'll take a vote. Very cool. And then finally, what's coming up for yourselves? You've been mentioning there's an EP. There's 3 songs so far. You mentioned demos. Are we 3 songs into a 6-song EP? What can we look forward to here?
You are, yeah. The EP is going to be called Silence. Silence is like the title track. And yeah, the next track is going to be coming. Should we tell them? Are we allowed to say?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's coming out on Halloween, actually. 31st.
Spooky, like it.
October. Yeah. There seems to be this accidental running theme of us making like creepy Halloween type scary videos, but it wasn't intended to be like that. We were just trying.
It's working.
What happened?
Yeah.
But the next one is coming out on the 31st of this month, and
it's gonna be a new video for that.
Yes. Hopefully, it doesn't get censored. Actually, I can imagine YouTube being really stupid about that.
No, I think it should be fine. We'll find out.
But yeah,
we'll find out.
It's definitely it's a lot less screamy, but it's still heavy and proggy, and that's all I can give you.
Cool. I'm in for whatever it is, whatever the ride is.
And then there's going to be 2 more songs that'll be released with the rest of the EP. Well,
I see.
As the whole sort of EP, the whole collective.
And plus, there'll be there's going to be intros and interludes and outros to the EP as well. We have a few loose ends to tie up in terms of like the overall package of it, but it's going to work. There's like a little, after the first couple of hits of like the intro of Silence, you can hear like almost like a woman speaking, like weeping in the background. That's part of like a cut off intro that we're going to like add to it.
Cool.
So we've done like the whole thing and have structured it, but then to meet deadlines, we've just cut it off and then blah blah blah.
Throw it in.
Hopefully, we can find a way of making it like run seamlessly from start to finish. But
if not, we'll say that for the album, which we should be hitting the studio to record drums for the album in February, which means it'll be a long time before anyone can actually hear it.
Yeah.
But
of course,
like 12 additional songs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I know others are very excited to hear those new bits and pieces as they come out. Thank you very much for your time and your insights today. I found it a fascinating discussion. And I'm really looking forward to the new music, especially from out of the gates with 3 songs that are all phenomenal. I'm so impressed with what you managed to do. So good luck to yourselves, onwards and upwards. And looking forward to eventually catching a live gig when that comes into fruition.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us, man.
Hopefully you found all that as intriguing as I did. Here's some of those details behind their songwriting and how they approach the music that is GRINN, ultimately. I'll make sure to put some links in the description of this very episode so you can find out where their online presence is and how you can keep in touch with their new music as and when it comes out. Thank you for listening to this. If you want to chat to me about the podcast or music in general, there's also going to be a link in the description to a Discord server where you can chat to me and other people who also like music like this. Thank you for being here. Do remember to subscribe if you haven't already yet, and hopefully I'll see you in another interview episode very soon.